It looks like everyone has successfully joined for our first session. So now I'd like to kick off the exciting lineup that we have for track 2, starting with a panel discussion about enterprise service management adoption in the UK and the US. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Clive Burford from King's College London to kick off our panel presentation about enterprise service management adoption. Clive.
Hello, Deb. Thank you very much for that. Welcome, everybody in the UK and across North America. As Deb says, this session is going to be talking about enterprise service management. I'm going to give just a very brief introduction, then hand over to some of my peers in other universities who are going to tell you a little bit about their experiences of implementing service management in their institution. We've got Henrik from Queen Mary University in London, Mark from Glasgow University, David and Hema from Georgia Tech. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting myself, Mark and Henrik, to speak with you today. We're all part of what is known as the RUGIT Service Management Group. Now, RUGIT is an acronym for the Russell Universities Group of universities, primarily research-intensive universities based across the UK. And similar to EDUCAUSE, RUGIT meets on a regular basis to promote the value and benefits of IT in the university workplace. So just thought I'd say thank you for inviting us. We've been working with EDUCAUSE about the last 18 months on various avenues of collaboration, and it's great to be here. So, enterprise service management. What is enterprise service management? I guess everyone on this call today has got a pretty good understanding of what service management is. That's what attracted you to this session in the first place. And IT service management in its traditional form, as you know, is all about ensuring that IT stays aligned to the business goals. There are various frameworks out there to help us do that. Enterprise service management has been around for a while to a greater or lesser extent, whereby areas of the business not IT have seen some of the value that IT service management has brought and have wanted to adopt some of those practices themselves. And it's really getting a bit of momentum now. And enterprise service management as a term is becoming very, very key to a lot of organizations. So that all the different strands within the university, not just IT, all align their activities to what, at the end of the day, are the business goals that will benefit all of us if we're successful. The universities have all got unique challenges, as you all know. Something Karen mentioned on her keynote was all the different areas have got different personas, and we know that all too well. So bringing them all together to adopt enterprise service management principles is a challenge. And as I said, my colleagues now would like to talk about some of their experiences doing just that in their institutions. So first and foremost, I'd like to hand over to Henrik, who is from Queen Mary University of London. Over to you, Henrik. You're still on mute, I think. You're stuck on mute.
Hold on, Henrik, 1 second. I'm trying to get you unmuted here.
We knew this was going far too smoothly.
Let's see. Henrik, you're a co-host, so you should be able to unmute yourself. Uh-oh. Just unmute. Let's see. Henrik, I'm wondering if it might make more sense for you to call in, because for some reason we can't get you unmuted. Oh, wait, hold on 1 second. This might be more. Okay, Henrik, now try it. I might have fixed it.
Right.
There
does
we
that
go.
sound better?
Excellent.
Yes,
Excellent.
the duplicate of your
Perfect. I kept clicking on the button and it kept telling me I'm a participant. I can't unmute myself. So I tried. Anyway, My name is Henrik Broga. I'm the head of IT service delivery at Queen Mary University of London. So, as it says, we're based in London, in the East End. We're one of the most diverse universities in the United Kingdom. The majority of our students and quite a lot of our staff as well are from either international communities or one of the diverse communities in the UK. And we get a huge amount of our intake in from areas of the UK which are lesser able, usually as they are, to go to university. So we pride ourselves in that. What I want to do when we talk about enterprise service management is look at three particular areas which I see as key to maybe not necessarily adoption, but certainly areas that you want to think about when you want to start think about service management, bringing it out to the wider organization. The first one is about the application of best practice methodologies. I'll come back into that in the next slide, but suffice to say that ITIL is quite a big thing in the UK, and a lot of us will be aligned to that. The next one is functions. So you've got the service desk, which is an obvious function of IT, and then there's the wider thought of the single point of contact, which I think we've all done very well in IT, but perhaps not as well in the wider organization. There is also something I think is quite important, which is looking at device procurement. So we've got a challenge there where you have academics with funding, and where do they go and spend that funding? And then added to that, how does that then link to your infrastructure, basically? And that takes me on to the third element that I want to cover, which is about the technologies. And that key thing is the service management tool. You've got self-service components, usually part of the service management tool, but they don't have to be. And then the application of key service technologies. And we're particularly talking about things like live chat, remote support. So things that assist you in delivering a wider service. So if you put on, yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Clive. So let's start with best practice methodologies. So I mentioned ITIL, which is the de facto best practice process that you would use predominantly, probably in the UK. I don't know what it's like with you guys. ITIL version 4 is out, and there's lots of talk about what we want to do with it. We're currently still aligning ourselves to what's called version 3, and that's primarily because our ITSM tool is configured to it. So you can see how these things link together. Some people might say, well, methodology, it's an IT thing. You don't need to think about that when you start pushing things out. I would probably say, yes, you do, if your IT organization is steeped in it. So if I go and ask the question to anyone in IT, they'll know off our heart what an incident and a request is, and they'll understand what a change request is. So we don't even need to mention these things. But when we go beyond into HR or estates and facilities, those other areas, they don't understand that inherent knowledge, that implicit understanding of how you apply service management that we bring with us. And I think we've just got to, we don't necessarily have to impose it on anyone, but we have to understand that implicit difference between their understanding of delivering service and our understanding of it in terms of methodology. In fact, there may indeed be methodologies out there that other areas of the business are using that we ought to look at as well, even if it's just to try and align what we do to what they do. So as I mentioned, we've adopted ITIL through the use of a shared tool set, and we have actually enabled the ITSM thinking, even if in a very boiled down version, with our e-learning support teams, but also our estates and facilities team. It doesn't mean that they follow everything, but at least they will follow things like incident management, so where things are broken, and request fulfillment, where you're asking for something over and above. So yes, in short, it helps to understand the methodology that we use and how you can adapt your thinking, if not your processes, when you start to roll out enterprise service management. I think that's ready for the next slide. Functions. So we mentioned the service desk before, and using that as a single point of contact, which I think is one of the key areas of service management and enterprise service management. We've got the IT service desk, which is part of my team, and they oversee the tickets that come in for library services for one of our overseas divisions, but also because we share ITSM toolset, we're also assisting our estates and facilities guys in delivering this particular function. It could be brought out broader, I would say, but we're on a journey, and I think that's it's important to look at it that way. We also do device procurement through our business support area. That is linked into our technology, and that means that you get to pick from a standardized IT service catalog. And I would say we've done very well with enabling the whole business to come to us for picking desktops, laptops, and any type of technology, and making it available in IT service catalog. We also agree the supplier contracts, and this helps us promote the idea of buying through us, because we get better deals when we do it as one rather than lots of different pockets of purchasing departments. So yes, thanks, Clive. You can go on to the next one. Service management tools. So we use a very aged, or can you call it vintage, version of a tool called Vanti. That has helped us, as I mentioned, stretch the service element to library services, e-learning, and estates and facilities. It is a clunky tool, and I think this is where I'll probably say the tool really determines how far you can go with this. There are self-service components in there, which we're all using. And then there are the extra service management technologies, which is where we've enabled service to be delivered in a better and more encompassing way. One of the things we've done well with is live chat, especially since we've been locked down 3 times now. That's really helped us deliver service in a much better way. And other teams have seen how we've used technology in that way and come to us, used us as a reference point to deliver the same service throughout. So even if we're not using the same tool, we're at least thinking in the same way, and we're thinking towards a goal of potentially applying AI over the top of it, so we can do this in unison rather than as individuals again. And I think that's onto the last slide. So yeah, takeouts from this. Best practice methodologies, they are a complex sell, and I think the question ought to be asked, do you need to apply it? And if you do, can you potentially adapt some of your elements to the other areas? Like, as I say, we've boiled it down to request fulfillment and incident management for a couple of areas, and that works perfectly well. Having that common understanding of what we talk about has really helped. Functions, the service desk as senior point of contact, it does need senior buy-in, because otherwise you're not going to be able to stretch it. You will have competing teams, and somebody needs to agree to put everything in one pot. And with the team that does it best, which arguably I would say IT does, and you will obviously benefit from a shared tool set there. A centralized IT procurement, it does carry a logical financial argument, and it has been much easier for us to sell this across an organization and say, if you're buying a laptop, you come to us. Technologies, as I mentioned before, archaic service management tools like our Ivanti version doesn't help. You really want a service management tool that is open and enables the idea of thinking beyond IT. A user-friendly self-service portal really does help as well. It's a great area for take-up. It's a great resource saver. So if you can bring things into a self-service portal, you're certainly onto a winner there. And then lastly, but not leastly, is to spearhead technology adoption. It is probably where we can really win over people from other areas, because we have the understanding, we have the IT graduates working for us. We could even collaborate with our computing services schools, as I've done some of, to bring technology in and help us enable a better service management delivery across the enterprise. And that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Henrik. And now, without further ado, time is of the essence. We're going to move north to Scotland and hand over to Mark Temple from the University of Glasgow.
And I can unmute myself, so great stuff. Thank you, Clive. Thanks, Henrik. Mark Temple, University of Glasgow. I'm conscious that we've not got a lot of time. Ideally, this would be a half-hour presentation, but I'm going to try and condense it into the 10 minutes that I've got, so I better shut up and get on with it. It's a story of what the journey that the university's been through. We started out with a procurement process when we were looking to change our service management platform. And I'd been steering it for a number of years towards it not just being for IT. And I'll go into a bit more in the next slides about that. But this was an opportunity to take, what would have just been an exercise for IT, but to broaden it out and to get the benefit across the organisation. So that's what I'm going to focus on here. Clive, could you kick me onto the next one? Thank you. Okay, so I don't know about your university, but I've worked for the University of Glasgow for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of change over the period. But I see a lot of practices that go on for years as well. Someone has a view of a way of doing something, and new staff inherit that and they pass it on to other staff. And quite often that is what makes us different. Why is our department different to other departments? Why do, we won't adopt that process. We want to do it differently. And to me, for enterprise service management, what you need is for people to focus on what's common to them all, not to be creating their own version of something, not to be reinventing their own wheel, and that's what we've worked towards across the past few years. So just a sample of some of the teams that we have now using a common platform, and in slight contrast to Henrik, we're using a brand new cloud version of Ivanti, so it's the same the same tool set, but using a cloud version, we're always on the latest release, so that certainly helps us take this forward. So looking at the touch points, what does enterprise service management bring to this? You've got touch points across all of your teams. We've got them using the same platform. In some areas, they need to be absolutely watertight from a data security point of view, and you need you need a platform that can do that for you. Talking about language, and I'll come on to that in the next slide, you need a system that is adaptable to this as well. I think Henrik mentioned about not inflicting something on departments, so we can't inflict incidents, changes and problems on HR because they don't speak that language, but we can help them to help themselves by adopting methodologies and processes that we're very comfortable with, and I'll go into that in the next slide. But just a couple of the other, to look at some of these areas, you do have connectivity between a number of these areas, and this is where you can learn from each other. You basically bridge the gap between these areas, rather than sending an email from finance to HR. If you're bought into enterprise service management and you do have the luxury of using the same platform, you can be moving the work about, whether that's automated or whether there's some manual handling, but you've got the common understanding of using that platform and using the methodologies there. Clive, can we kick on to the next slide, please? Okay, again, what have we got in common? What is common to all of these things? I mean, I started with our head of campus security many moons ago, and I said, you guys must need to have a note of who is the customer in something. Now, for you might not call them the customer. You may call them, you can have the person has lost something. You're going to have the person who's had something stolen. You're going to have the person who's reporting something has been damaged because of a crime or just a general incident. But you need to manage that through its life cycle. So we've got the who, we've got the what, and we need to know who's the owner, who is working on this. Is anyone working on it? So there's a commonality there. There's no difference between someone reporting a window's been smashed or there's a hole has appeared in the middle of the road, to someone reporting that a printer's jammed or that their PC hasn't booted. It's got a life cycle, and that's something that we are working in IT. We've been working with that for years. We know the lingo. We know that it's second nature to us, but that's not the case in other areas. And that's what the enterprise service management side of things brings to people. So it's been able to, again, in the tool set, use the language that the customer expects there, and even the term customer. I mean, if our data protection office talk about a subject, our complaints department talk about a complainant, IT will talk about a customer, HR may talk about an employee. So your tool set has to be able to reflect that change depending on the audience, that you're not imposing a language for IT on the other areas. Clive, could we go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so getting on to the benefits of this. As Henrik mentioned, a single portal. You have one place. Staff and students don't need to know how your university is structured to be able to consume the services that you provide, or to report issues with a service that they're using. They don't need to know where on your website estates live or where on your website HR live. They go to a common portal. They have knowledge at their fingertips, and they have the common catalogue there. Using the same system does help your support staff help each other. We've, within the university, gone on to this source of institutional knowledge. We used to do a lot of signposting. A student went to student services and asked a question. They said, "Well, sorry, that's not us. It's the library who answered that. You need to go and see the library." They went to the library asking about, Their fees, they said, well, sorry, we don't know anything about fees. You'll need to go and see the people a mile up the road. Using a common platform and a common knowledge base allows you to answer questions, or at least help students to help themselves without having to say, sorry, it's not us, it's them, you know, go and see the people up the hill. Obviously, again, so that's our shift left again. We're getting that from the knowledge base. Thank you, Clive. You're a mind reader. Other things, shared reporting, definitely, you know, it brings to the party. You've got different sides of the organisation sharing with each other, saying, you know, we've got this great dashboard which tells us all of these things. All right, well, we've never used dashboards before. Well, here, you know, so it does, you know, this does work across the organisation, that you're helping each other. As I said, less signposting, and definitely driving automation. Return on investment, you've got one platform, you're licensing one platform, you're developing against one platform, you must get return on investment on that. And I'm conscious of time. On to the last slide, please, Maestro. So what would stop this working for you? Well, as in anything, culture plays a huge part in it. You know, I work for the University of Glasgow. We've been around since 1451. You know, we have picked up some baggage along those 500 plus years, and you've always got to get over that. So it's bringing people along on that journey with you. The platform, you could do this with multiple platforms, but my strong feeling is that it works best if you're all on one platform. Other things that are going to work against you, you know, if you won't adopt a new way of working, and you want to stay using shared mailboxes rather than, you know, getting into the world of service management, then, you know, it's going to hold you back. And again, you may have other systems already to do these things, and you can't get them married up. And I'm going to shut up now and let David have his time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, conscious of time, I'm just going to hand straight over now to Georgia Tech and David and Hema. Over to you guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for that information. So, David Mack, we are with the the Georgia Institute of Technology. Go ahead and flip the slide. You can actually do 2 slides if you want. All right, so just a little bit about us. We're a public research university. We are a member of the University System of Georgia, which is actually a big part of how we've had to implement our service model. We had about 40,000 in enrollment last fall, and we support roughly 8,000 faculty and staff. Just to kind of give you the idea of what we're working with, and we're located right in the heart of Atlanta. So go ahead to the next one. All right, so where I sit and where Hema sit, we are in a group called the Enterprise Resource Planning Group. So we are part of an IT structure, but we're a separate one that really focuses on the enterprise level systems that we've implemented. So one of those systems that we've done for our finance department is Workday Financials. And then another big piece of that, which is our HR system, is Oracle PeopleSoft. And what separates that Oracle is that we are not actually the ones that implemented it. That is part of that larger university system. So the University System of Georgia is the one that actually owns and implements that. We just are tied into that. Another system that we're using for our ITSM model is Servicenow. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, next one. All right, so for instance of time, you can read through this. Basically, this is just speaking to how we have set up our model. The goals really speak to what our overall objectives are. And I think it kind of speaks to what the other presenters were saying, is providing that quality end-to-end across the board service. Historically at Georgia Tech, we've had use of a lot of different ticketing systems and a lot of email inboxes and a lot of, hey, I know Joe in accounting, so I'm going to give him a call because I know that that's how things can get done, right? So we have implemented Servicenow as our method, and we've gotten rid of most of those email boxes. And just to kind of speak to what Mark did, it was a huge culture change trying to change that. A part of that model too, and what we've done to make it easier, is really investing in our tier 0 support. So using ServiceNow, we've put a significant amount of time into developing knowledge articles that will support whatever the caller or customer is trying to figure out. If that is IT related, or if it's finance related, or if it's HR related, we all want that to be generally in the same place. So if you go to the next slide, Clive. All right, so this is our 40,000 foot view of how we operate here at Georgia Tech. We have a tiered system. Again, like I said, we put a lot into that tier 0, and we continue to build on that, because ideally we want help to be done there, right? We want a person to be able to know exactly where to go to get the answer to the question that they need. But that also includes trainings. It also includes known issues. If we know that something's outstanding, that's affecting a lot of people, we want to push that out there. And then another part of that is our self-service catalog request. If these aren't able to answer it, we have a second level, which is our tier 1. And these represent different desks. From a setup point of view, we know that they're different. We have different people handling different kind of incidents and transferring before, but we really try to make it look like one, right? So we try to make it a central place, depending on, regardless of what information you're trying to get. And then, of course, if tier 1 can't answer it, we have our network of tier 2 agents. And we're continuously adding different functions and different capabilities in tech. We came on heavily with the finance and HCM, and we've partnered very closely with our IT. So it's really the same system, and it's the same entry point. It just goes to that. So regardless of how it comes in, if it's a integration issue, if it is an accounting issue, or if it's an HR issue, right, we should be able to use our system and transfer it over to the appropriate party. If you go to the next slide. So I wanted to show you kind of our methodology on this, and what the customer, and it's what we call someone in our campus that's looking for help, comes to see. So this is our central landing page. So these tiles represent the services that we have, and again, we continue to grow them. So we started out with about 4, and we continue to make it bigger, really, each year. So this central help question, how can we help you, is like a Google search. So if you have a general question, you can type it in here, and it will pull from all of the different knowledge bases that we have. We go to the next slide. So when you click in one of the tiles, for example, this is our financial tile. We have some specific information that is tied to this particular function. So for financials here, we have different categories if you want to learn more. And then we have our direct links for our helps. You can go to the next slide, Clive. Okay, so here's another example. If we dug it down a little bit deeper, and this is going to be the same for all of our areas, but this is where we have things like our training guides are listed out, and our job aids, our knowledge articles, and then any sort of self-service requests that you can do on this particular function, which is expenses and travel and expenses. And the next slide. All right, so requests, we mentioned that briefly. So self-service requests are an attempt to really streamline processes, and we've had a lot of success with these. These are things, think of like I need security to a particular system, or maybe I need a some sort of work tag created, or I need something that's repeatable. And what we do is set up these really defined forms that make the user fill out exactly what is needed to complete that task. And then that goes through an approval process if it's necessary, and that's all done with inside the system. And then any kind of the actual implementation of that task is all done and tracked within the system. The beauty of that too is it sends back messages, and it allows the initiator to go and see where the status is, depending on to where it is. All right, next slide. All right, so this is the, if we weren't able to solve it in our tier 0, this is where you would go next. So this is going to be consistent across the board, and we have one central number and one central endpoint for requesting help. So you can always pick up the phone and call. And we utilize a phone tree method to get you to the right person or to that right desk. Again, trying to keep it as uniform as possible. We also have the ability for the user to submit a request help here. And here's an example of one we have. So fill out the information, and it works very similar to the phone call, where that will get routed to the appropriate person that needs to work on it. Okay, next slide. All right, so going back to where we first talked about. So when we're looking at our PeopleSoft implementation, I had said that we don't, at Georgia Tech, technically own the system, right? So that is a university system. So all the universities in the system for the state of Georgia are using the same. With that comes some challenges, right? So they're operating in their own service model. So we have our instance of Servicenow, and they have their instance of Servicenow. So we're using two separate portals. And with that creates that two separate teams. With that comes two separate processes and different terminologies. And then another big challenge is that knowledge, that tier 0 that we've worked to create. As Georgia Tech's specific knowledge articles belong to us, and then anything that would be broader for the larger university system would be managed by that university system. All right, go ahead to the next one. So this is how we've combated this, and this is the approach that we've taken. So this is our HCM tile, and hopefully to you it would look very similar to what we just looked at for the larger. We did this on purpose. So this is our landing page, and we want it to look just the same to create that experience. Go ahead, go to the next slide, Clive. All right, so this is where it differs. So if someone was to click on a knowledge article and it was ours, it would open just like it would for anywhere else. However, if it belongs to the University System of Georgia, we seamlessly just push them over to the other side. So it looks a little bit different, but we try to make that as seamless as possible. And then the next one, we'll look at the incidents. So incidents work in the same vein as the knowledge articles. So you can create that number. And like I said, you call the same number and you'll submit the same incident request. However, if it is one USG or that related to the HR model, it automatically sends that message to the shared service center, which is in a completely different city. So they'll handle it. It does create some connectivity issues, but for the most part, we try to keep it as seamless as possible. All right, next slide. All right, so just kind of overall looking at this and the way that we've done it. So a lot of benefits to the way that we've done it. As some of y'all have already said before, this creates that single point of service, which is really key, right? We want to drive as many people to one place because it's confusing to say, well, I go here for this and I go here for that and I go for that. It creates frustration. So this helps to do that. it makes that consistency and uniform experience. It allows us to retire a lot of that email support, which is just so hard to manage doing that. And it allows us to collect better metrics. On the other side of that, some of the challenges that we have seen implementing this model is that culture change, right? I think Mark spoke to that a little bit. It's hard to change that culture that people have been doing this for decades, and it's just the way that things are done. So asking them to do a different method is hard, and it takes some effort. As part of that too is a learning curve. A lot of people had to learn a new system and a new way of doing these things. So that's another one. Some of the challenges that we've had with that one USG is just inconsistency. Ours are of a certain level versus theirs, and we don't have any insight or any sway into how those look or how those are written. And then, of course, those handoffs. The handoffs can be a little difficult. It's a lot easier. We in our group, we kind of oversee all of the different areas that are operating in the system to make sure that they're working with them. It makes it a little bit harder when that system is outside of our organization. And then some of the metrics are a little bit different on both sides. So that was our high level view. I'll turn it back over to Clive, I think, for any kind of questions.
Hi, Dave. Thank you very much for that. Hema, do you want to take over? Hema, you're going to wrap the session up, as I recall.
So there were 3 questions, and most of it we have answered in the chat. So the first one was whether Mark manages the process for all departments, or they just route the ticket to, and he answered for some he is managing, whereas for others they are just sending it to that particular assignment group. And also there was question on presentation slide deck. I have posted the link for that. It is also available in the event page for you all to check it out. And finally, there was a question on Servicenow employee self-service. Is GT using that, and have we integrated ticketing between GT and USG? Yes, we do use employee self-service portal and also we have integrated the 2 Servicenow portals between our university system and Georgia Tech for the HCM service model. So that kind of covers all the questions.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
I would hand it over back to Deb.
Yes, Hema, thank you. Thank you so much. We want to thank our groups that gave the presentation on the enterprise service management adoption in the US and UK. At this point, we're going to go directly into our second session, and it is about cloud strategies. So I'd like to introduce Jody Couch from UC Berkeley, who is our moderator for the cloud strategies session, and she will introduce our next presenter. Jody?
Give me just 1 second to get that set up, Deborah. Make sure I got the right people with the right. All right, Jody, you should have the permissions that you need now.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so we are on to the second session of track 2, applying ITSM. We have Carrie Robertson leading the session today. Carrie's the Director of Infrastructure at the University of California Office of the President, leading cloud and on-premise hosting and network, database, and system administration. Carrie's led 6 unique enterprise application cloud migrations, including most recently for the human resources system that serves all 230,000 employees of the UC system, including me. So I thank Carrie for keeping my, my paychecks coming. And with that, I will turn it over to Carrie.
All right, let me get my screen. All right, does that look okay, Jody? Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So my name is Carrie Robertson. Today, I'm here to talk about different cloud strategies. So you've been given the direction, you need to go to the cloud, but how are you going to get there? So some considerations you need to take before you begin. First, let's talk about this. This is my favorite conversation because it's so many different things to different people. So some people consider software as a service the cloud. They're right. Some people consider their campus private cloud a cloud. They're also correct. For this conversation, I'm going to focus on those most common cloud providers, which are Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. I'm not really going to be focusing on those private cloud providers. There are some questions around the benefits to those, and it's really, really a niche kind of market. So for this conversation, I'm going to just focus on those biggest, what I'm going to call public cloud providers. So one size does not fit all. So as Jody mentioned, I've worked at 4 different campuses now. And so I thought I would talk through the most recent experiences I had at 2 different campuses. So currently I work at University of California Office for the President. That's the administering body that oversees the shared system-wide technology and services for the different 10 campuses, 5 medical centers, and 3 national labs. So at my time at University of California, Santa Cruz, we were in need of doing a hardware refresh to the data center, but we actually didn't have enough space in our data center to also support faculty and their research needs. So the decision was made to move from self-managed enterprise applications in the campus data center to be moving to self-managed in AWS for those enterprise applications. The timeline for that project was 2 years. We had 2 years to get out of the data center, or else we'd have to refresh all that hardware, which was extremely expensive. It was funded from the existing reserves, so the money we had been saving up to make that large CapEx purchase. And we did move all of those enterprise systems, which are listed below. The notable piece here is because it was pretty new, this was back in 2015, 2016, it was pretty new to our campus, so we had to go big and bold and start off with the identity and access management, because if we could do identity and access management and we could have all of campus logging in through single sign-on, through Shibboleth, using Grouper, all of these key critical services, if we could do that, then our business partners were more comfortable that we could also move their enterprise systems, such as PeopleSoft or Banner. So that was a strategy there. And then at University of California Office for the President, we were using a managed service provider at their own data center, and we're told that we had to leave in 6 months. And that was for our system, as Jody mentioned, which is handles all the payroll, about $1 billion in payroll for 230,000 employees, and people really like to get paid, and they like to be paid accurately. And so it was a pretty critical system that we had to be successful in that migration. So we actually leveraged a new managed service provider and had them help us move to AWS. And that project was successful, and we were able to fund it through the future savings that we knew we'd have when we left the existing managed service provider. So it's just an example that there are many different strategies to get to the cloud. So if you're hoping to come up out of this presentation with a single answer, I'm not going to provide that for you, but what I'm going to provide you is a lot of dimensions and considerations that you should take when coming up with a strategy that works for your campus. So defining your journey, most of the time when I talk to folks about moving to the cloud, it's associated with their desire to go from a data center to the public cloud, going from the data center to Azure, going from the data center to AWS, something like that. I wanted to highlight here that there are other options, such as I did at University of California Office for the President. We actually moved from a private cloud to the public cloud with a different managed service provider. So I bring this up just so people remember that there is an option to go to the AWS, the GCP, the Azure with help from somebody else, because maybe your team isn't ready and maybe you need a stepping stone. Maybe you need to prove that your systems can migrate to the cloud successfully, and then you work on moving that into self-managed mode. There's a lot of different options. So I want to make sure people remember that. I often walk into conversations where people assume it's self-managed 100% or bust, and that's not always the case. All right, so a couple of different migration strategies here. So you've probably heard of these by now, right? So there's the lift and shift. That's basically taking everything you have in your data center and just moving it to the cloud, right? You aren't optimizing anything. You're not taking advantage of any cloud services, such as a managed database, nothing like that. You're just moving it. The challenge with that is it can meet some of your requirements. If you need to leave your data center, then fantastic, you're going to be able to do that. But you're not going to realize many savings, if any. Sometimes it's actually more expensive to recreate exactly what you have in your data center in the cloud if you don't take advantage of those cloud native solutions. The next option that people discuss is sometimes it's replatforming. I like to think about it as more like this lift, tinker, and shift, right? So you're taking some advantage of those cloud services, but you're not restructuring the entire system. You're not trying to make every bell and whistle work perfectly in the cloud initially, because otherwise you get stuck. So that's the third option, is re-architecting. And I love this option, and I totally support this option. If you have unlimited people, resources, financial resources, and unlimited time, then this is the best solution ever, right? Because if you have the very best people and you have a huge number of them, and you can really re-architect everything and make it completely serverless and make it totally optimized, this is a great option. It's not realistic for higher ed for most people. Most people can't actually dedicate over a year to migrating one system and don't have endless resources that can just, you know, refine the perfect solution. So I feel like re-architecting, unless you're building, you know, simple web pages, something like that, is really not realistic if you're trying to get out of your data center. So usually people end up in the re-platforming and taking advantage of those options where they can, right? It's not perfect. They're going to get it there, and they're going to keep tinkering. They're going to keep tweaking it as they need to, but they are starting off with some of those improvements, such as a managed database. All right, so the biggest mistake. So I think this is what I usually go to presentation for, is like the honest truth, right? Like I actually want to know what the problems are so that I don't replicate them. So the biggest mistakes when you're coming up with your cloud strategy, first of all, is thinking like, oh, you know, we have time on this. We have time. We don't need to figure out our strategy yet. Nobody's actually using the cloud on our campus. Okay, that's wrong, right? Faculty are going to conferences. They're getting coupon codes. Your staff have accounts that they're playing with in their personal time. Something is happening on the cloud. If you have a Google Suite, you can even get to GCP without realizing it. That piece can be enabled for folks. So something is already happening on your campus. The cloud's been around and strong for well over a decade, and you need to prepare yourself that you're not starting off perfectly clean, but you need to acknowledge there is something there. So you cannot just pretend it's not happening. That's not going to work. Another strategy I've seen that does not work well is when somebody says, oh, let's move things to the cloud. Everybody go play, do whatever you want. It'll be fantastic. Build, 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 with no structure at all. And that only works if that's your end game. If you plan to leave it completely unstructured and more of a free-for-all forever. Otherwise, all you're going to do is take things away from people. And most people don't adapt to that well. Most people want to be adhering to standards from the beginning and know where they have flexibility, but giving them the world and then taking it away is really hard to do. So I think that is a big mistake. Multi-cloud from initiation. So this one can be debated, but I have a pretty strong opinion about it. So I want to acknowledge that others might feel this is a great solution. For me, given the limited resources that I've seen at the 4 locations that I've been at in higher ed, going multi-cloud from the beginning, saying we are going to support everything completely and fully and be super deep in all the major providers is not realistic, right? So you can definitely know that you're going to need to support all of the cloud providers, but you need to have a preferred cloud provider because that's the one you're going to go the deepest on. The only time that it makes sense to go multi-cloud from initiation is if you're going to not leverage any of those cloud native microservices that really help you to get the benefit of the cloud, right? If you're really going to be cloud agnostic on every single one of your workloads, then sure, you could start from the beginning. But pretending that you can support all 3 new platforms at the same time of those 3 big providers is not realistic. And that's where people start struggling, is trying to do too much. And their people get confused and they can't leverage those microservices that are vendor specific. Another challenge I've seen is this extensive and rigid upfront planning. So this is I'm going to spend a year preparing exactly how I'm going to move everything to the cloud, and I'm going to build it that way, and it's going to be perfect. And I have this beautiful schedule, and we're going to fit it. That doesn't work because the cloud keeps changing, right? So every week there's new services shared and available, and your requirements are going to change, and there's new instance types. Everything keeps changing. So you need to have a high level plan, but going to have super crazy specifics and locking them down is really going to be a struggle. It kind of goes against everything the cloud stands for, right? The agility that the cloud really encourages. Categorizing the work as infrastructure. This is just an infrastructure project. And as a director of infrastructure, I love infrastructure, but realistically, this is going to absolutely change the world for your finance team. It's going to change the world for your security team. It's going to impact your business owners quite a bit too when you move out of a data center and you're moving to the cloud. So pretending that those groups aren't going to be impacted by this is also a big mistake. I mentioned previously the lift and shift, moving an exact replica of the data center to the cloud is a big risk. You get not as many benefits as you would think. And often people move things exactly as is to the cloud and then sometimes have to move them back out of the cloud because they didn't move it in a smart way and the costs were out of control. And then the last one is, and unfortunately, I want to be an optimistic person, but if you base your cloud strategy on what I'm calling an aspirational state, that's my nice way of saying, oh yeah, my team's an expert on everything cloud. They know exactly what they need to do. And we fully understand all of our infrastructure, and our business partners are completely on board and will have no concerns with us moving their system. That itself can also lead to a pretty big challenge related to your cloud strategy. So now you're ready to get started. So the very first thing you need to do is figure out, how well is your scope defined? Is it something that everybody understands? Do they actually understand it? Is it that all enterprise systems, what's an enterprise system? You know, you really got to lock that down. We've got to make sure you really understand all of the infrastructure as is. Sometimes I'm finding that historical information has left with a contractor's departure or something. You get ready to migrate and everybody's like, ooh, I don't know what that server did. I don't know why that was there. That is not helpful. So you want to make sure that you really understand the scope, it's well defined, and everybody agrees to it. Next, why now? So this is a big one. The cloud's been around for a while. I think there's a big push for people to move to the cloud. There's all the cloud benefits. I'm not going to get into those. Everybody knows those by now. But you need to figure out, why right now? Why right now is it important for you to go to the cloud? Are you retiring your data center? Admit it, right? The worst thing you can do is pretend that you're going to keep the data center and then not, because then people don't have trust with you. What's happening to your existing managed service provider if you're leaving them? Why are you leaving them? Is it service quality? Is it cost? You need to acknowledge those things. You need to be really transparent with people about why you're leaving and why you're moving to the cloud. And then another one, which is out of a personal experience, is, you know, leadership, your current leadership can be fully supportive of moving to the cloud. If you get new leadership, you really need to confirm that that new leadership is also going to support you, because if a new leadership comes in and your cloud strategy changes, then how are you going to handle that if you're halfway through a project or a migration? You're about to retire the data center and then they say, no, let's keep it. You need to really think about that and the why now. All right, the next one is the timeline. So kind of to add on to the why now, we need to figure out what the timeline is. I have been most successful in my cloud migrations when there is a hard, firm timeline. When that timeline can't be moved unless there is substantial costs, right? Of course, you can always pay and get yourself out of it, most problems, but you need to be really clear about having a firm timeline. If it's just the mindset of, we want to move to the cloud because we want to move to the cloud and we'll do it in the next few years, it's going to be really hard to be successful there, because people are going to be trying to get other projects in front of your project. You know, the business is going to push back about what their timeline, what works for them. Student systems is going to say, oh, we don't want to move during enrollment, which of course makes sense. But you really have to think about your timeline well, think about what's going to happen if that timeline is missed, and make it clear so people are all invested. All right, then you need to come up with your cloud strategy statement. So this essentially is, we are moving this scope of work to the cloud because of this thing on this timeline, right? So at University of California, Santa Cruz, it was, we are moving all of the enterprise systems to the cloud because there is no more room in our data center for faculty to do research. And all of this has to be out by, I don't know, I think it was like June of 2018, because our hardware is going to need to be, and it's end of life at that point. So the hardware has to be retired, right? That was our statement. And we would say it to everybody. Anybody we could find was super clear as to why we had to do that. At University of California Office for the President, we are moving this giant payroll system to the cloud because our current vendor is forcing us to leave, and we must be out by December 2020. There's no way around that, right? So that was a very strong statement. Everybody understood the scope. It was super clear. They understood why now. They're understanding that it can't move, and that we've got a firm date that we can't control, right? I can't control that hardware's end of life. I can't control that a vendor is kicking us out. Those are things I can't control. That helps really to push along the narrative. Stakeholder engagement. So I actually put these in order that I think they're the most important. This is a little daring here. I put them in order for people to consider that this is the order I would go into when I was having these conversations. So the first one is security. If your security team is not comfortable with the cloud, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not. You've got to win them over. Either they're on board and you can win, or you might have to win them over, but you have to get them there. Finance is the next important, not only because you need project funding, but this is going to absolutely change their world. They are going to have to think about OpEx, and that is not something everybody's familiar with. Project funding, ongoing funding, recharge, all of that. Then there are the normal groups, right? IT leadership, your business partners, making sure they're on board. I feel like if those 4 are all aligned, then you can usually bubble that up to the executive leadership and get sign off because it's infrastructure primarily. So they're usually like, okay, if it makes everybody happy. Looking to see where you can leverage faculty and students. Do you have a strong computer science group that you could be leveraging to help with your project, to help with your migrations, to help with your ongoing? Can you leverage those folks to become staff? And then human resources, because jobs will need to change at some point, those job descriptions. So next, the next section here is around financials. So this is the one I think people forget, in my opinion, the most. So, you need to think about how you're going to fund the cloud long-term. It's very different from a data center where you buy equipment, it sits there 5 years, and then you retire it, right? This is a very different world. The biggest challenge that I've seen over and over again is knowing the true cost of any service or application, right? Can you tell me exactly what your student system costs? Exactly. Are you going to include electricity? Are you including the real estate? Are you including the people? Are you including the people beyond just the developers that support the system? Are you including the network people who need to help? Are you including the service management people who also need to participate? These are all things that you really need to understand, because the number one question you're going to get asked when you move to the cloud is, well, did you save any money? And your answer, you have to have a comparison point, and you don't have that usually in higher ed to start with. They just know, well, the application, the licensing costs this much, but there's so much more. So you need to really be thinking about the financial impact at your campus level, at your division level. Another consideration is how important is the optimization. Can you wait to do cost optimization till after you're there? If you can, that's going to save you a bunch of money, right? And a bunch of time. If you can, not money, I'm sorry, it won't save you money. It will cost you money, but it will save you a lot of time. And the idea there is that if you can get your workloads moved to the cloud, perhaps they're slightly oversized, and then you sort of tighten, the sizing as you're using it, then that's going to allow some comfort for people rather than making it really lean from the beginning. That might cause some concerns around people from their risk perspective. Next, the financial for the project. So at one university, we were able to leverage our future savings to fund the project, which was a great way to do it. We did have some surprises around our licensing bubble. There were also some kind of licensing opportunities that needed to be cleaned up. Maybe we weren't quite where we needed to be with some of our licensing, and that was uncovered as part of this project. So that's something to think about. Can your staff actually absorb all of this work? Do you have a group of people that have this capacity? Are you going to need to backfill them? Do you give them stipends? Do you need contractors? Do you have the non-utilities? So obviously there's the Azure, GCP, AWS utility bill that comes every month, but have you thought about how you're going to actually fund the other pieces, like a PM or something like that? Do you have that in your current staff or not? Can the existing workloads be decommissioned as they're cut over? Or if your only way you realize savings is by shutting down your entire data center, then you really need to think about that when you're talking about the timing and the overall strategy. And another consideration that some people forget to leverage is that some of these cloud providers are willing to help you, right? So they want you to leave your data center. They want you to move to the cloud. So talk to them and see if you tell them about your project and work with them, sometimes they have ways to help you, and that's definitely to your advantage. Next, the financial ongoing. Okay, so you're going to try to use a calculator. You're going to anticipate what your utility charges are. They're going to be off because you aren't going to actually know how you're going to build it and how it's going to operate until it's there. Are you going to shut it down at night? Are you going to have to size up on certain times of the year? You aren't really going to know the true cost. So you need to be careful with committing to a specific number. But another challenge I've seen is, not thinking enough about the recharge, right? So recharge can be done in several different ways. Are you going to recharge other entities around your campus? Is everything going to be centrally funded? You really need to sort through how that's going to work. Recharge is something that if you need to do recharge down to the exact penny, you need to set up a completely different account structure and tagging strategy before you even start. It's totally different than if you're going to be centrally funding all of these systems or whatever the workloads are. So it's something you definitely need to be thinking about. Another consideration is what services are going to be offered centrally. So let's say that you are going to have, a central payer account and there's going to be recharge. Do you need to kind of charge people for doing the recharge services? I don't know, maybe. Are they going to come to you asking for help and need architectural design help from you? How are you going to pay for that? Or are they just get to leverage your IT experts as part of the central funding? That's great, but you need to think about that. even the integrations between each other. There's, data ingress and egress. You've got to be thinking about all that. How is that going to be recharged and shared? So it's really a different world that you need to spend some time thinking about. And then one of the other challenges I had was I came to my financial person. I was like, we're going CapEx to OpEx. And she was like, okay, like a little nervous. And then she got on board. And then like 6 months after we went live, I'm like, and now I need some money for a big capital expenditure. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And this is because I was thinking, well, I'm moving to a monthly invoice. But then there are advantages like in AWS, there's something called savings plans and reserved instances. And if you buy those things up front, you basically are saving money. It's kind of like pay up front and you save some money throughout the next year. But that's a big CapEx cost, right? You can easily spend 100,000 or more on these reserved instances and things like that. So you say you're going from CapEx to OpEx, but sometimes there's still some CapEx. You got to make sure to prepare for that and warn your financial folks. It's really important to get them on board early.
And Carrie, we are right about out of time. I'm so sorry. This is great content, but yeah. So if you want to do your wrap up, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay. Sure. No problem. All right. So in summary, you need to make sure to conduct an honest assessment of your current state. You need to broadcast your cloud mission statement far and wide. You need to make sure to engage those auxiliary groups like financial and security. Remember, technology is going to be the easiest part. Definitely fully commit and make sure to celebrate visibly so that others want to participate in your effort.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was a great primer. I know your slides are going to be available for the little bit that we missed at the end, and that will be a great tool for people to use to figure out their cloud strategy, and then also communicate. So thank you all, and I will hand it over to our next guest.
Thank you, Jody, for that handover. So now we're ready to start our session 3. So we will be having a little bit of ITSM story time with Chaz Grundy. So now we'd like to turn it over to you, Chaz. He's from the University of Notre Dame, and we're ready for our ITSM story time.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share screen here now because that's what we do in the world of Zoom, isn't it? So let's see here. But I also still want to see all your lovely faces. And so I have to adjust my windows. Sweet. All right, we are here. Cool. So welcome to ITSM Story Time. This is going to be 20 minutes of, or 19 minutes. I'll try to keep it tight here, of fables and failures, mostly my failures, of IT service management throughout the last, I don't know, 9 or 10 years that I've joined our central IT organization here. So let's kick this off first with a story of power, literal power. My wife and I bought a house in 2015. About 3 years later, she comes to me and says, you know, our electric bill is pretty expensive. I said, how much is it? She's the one who pays the bills. I don't even see it. And she says, it's like $200 a month. I said, that does seem awfully high. Like, how much should it be? I do a little research and find out that in our area, in our region, our neighborhood, a house like ours should cost about $100 a month. And for some reason, we're spending $200. Do a little bit of brainstorming. Where is this going? Well, we have this chest freezer in the basement. So the first thing we think of is this big chest freezer in the basement. It works beautifully, but it's pretty old. It needs to be defrosted every few, 2 or 3 times a year. And it's due to be defrosted. I said, why don't I unplug that and defrost it? And we'll just leave it unplugged for a month and see what happens. And a month later, she comes in and says, you'll never believe it. Our electric bill went down to $100. That's right. The freezer in the basement cost us $100 a month to keep powered on. I'll show you this. They stopped making, Sears stopped selling this brand in 1972. On the inside of the lid, somebody wrote years when they had defrosted it, dates that they had defrosted it, going back as far as 1980. And so needless to say, we did not plug it back in. In fact, I put it up on Facebook Marketplace and sold it. When they tried to offer me money, I said, no, you just can't take it for free because they're going to need that money. But we went and bought a new freezer, Energy Star compliant, and it's estimated to cost us $50 a year in electricity. So where's the ITSM story here? Well, I'll tell you what, I went to work and I kept thinking, what other freezers are we running? What freezers are we running here in our data center or around campus or anywhere that still work but they cost us way more than it's actually worth to keep running. You know, the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, maybe it's time to revisit and broaden that word broken. Our next story is when we rolled out problem management, we were struggling with getting people to understand, because ITSM is not a very sexy and accessible vernacular, right? We have lots of terms and phrases, and you want to say value stream and watch people's eyes glaze over. And so how do you get people around to some of these things? So one of our colleagues came up with this great story. He said, you go out to the car in the morning and you see there's a flat tire. So what do? You put air in the tire and you drive to work. You come home, next morning you go out there and there's a flat tire again. It's still flat. It's like, oh, whoa, okay. So you put air in the tire. Now, a normal, sane, rational person at this point says, there's something wrong with the tire. I need to figure out what it is. And they find that there's a nail in the tire. You pull out the nail, you put it in the plug, or you take it somewhere that does that kind of thing. They fix the tire, you fill it up, and now you've resolved the issue, right? You've taken care of the problem. Most of us would not go out and say, well, I guess part of my morning routine from forever on now is to put air in the tire every single morning because it always goes flat every morning, right? That seems like a really seriously stupid thing to do. And yet, how many systems do we have that we schedule to reboot once a day or twice a day or whatever? Because, well, if I don't, there's a memory leak and it'll crash and then we're gonna have an outage. And so I can prevent the outage by just doing, putting air in the tire every single morning. So when we walked through this thing, we actually laid this out and said, listen, problem management is like this, right? You have an incident, tire was flat, so I resolved it, cool. But when it happened again, and most of us said, oh, I think there's a pattern forming here. I realized that incident is not resolved. It's really more of a workaround when I put air in the tire. So there's an underlying issue, and that's our problem. So now I'm going to form a problem team. Now it happens that it's me in the garage, looking at the tire. That's me, a problem team of one. But why is it going flat? Root cause analysis. What's the root cause? It's a nail. Cool. I remove the nail, I plug the hole, now I've solved this thing and I resolve my problem. So that's a lot more accessible to people, and that helped click for people what it was we were talking about. Now, in this project that we did last year, we also struggled with the part where form a problem team sounds a lot like extra work. So what do you mean? You want me to get on some old team and work on this thing in addition to all my other job like that? Why would I do that? Also, problem teams, not super exciting, right? Resolve a problem. What's way more interesting and engaging? A mystery. So we borrowed a little bit of a theme, and we themed our whole project around, you guessed it, Scooby-Doo, the mystery gang. So when we have a problem, you think about, I've got to form a team. I have to investigate. I have to get down to the cause of this thing. What is this? It's not the most exciting thing, right? But it's enough to get you thinking, well, maybe, okay, I see where this is. We're going to solve this mystery. It's a mystery that needs to be solved. And it's not just a boring problem team. So we sent people Scooby snacks. By the way, this was right after we all went and started working from home. So it was a lot more complicated to mail people Scooby snacks than it would have been if we had just been in the office. But we had, a little theme song that we recorded on a ukulele of all things. And my favorite is one of my colleagues put together this next clip here.
This ghost really doesn't need any introduction. As soon as we clean him up, I'm sure you'll recognize him. There. Look familiar?
Unpatched servers.
Like in person.
So in case you couldn't hear that, because it was really quiet on my end as well, he says, look who it is, and it's unpatched servers. So we have this, we had a little bit of fun with it. Our next story is back to the appliances route for whatever reason. Another project we did over the last year or so is to establish a series of guiding principles and architectural standards. Again, the most exciting titles and terms you could come up with. And one of the challenges is trying to get IT staff around campus to jump in and say, yeah, I understand you have this standard, and so I'm going to try to fit and work within your standard. A lot of times it's not something you can enforce, it's something we're trying to educate and get them to buy in on. So how do you convince people to do this? Well, one of our enterprise architects tells us a story about him and his wife buying a new refrigerator that replaced a refrigerator they had. older one, and he measured the space and everything. But he went with this cool new model. It has the French doors instead of the one side door kind of thing. And well, when it got delivered and the delivery people put it in there, the guys looked at it and said, you know, that's not going to open, right? It turns out when he measured it on the assumption that it would fit into the space, but he didn't measure it with the doors swinging open. So he had to knock out a wall to try to fit this thing. And they figured that was actually the better solution than sending it back, ordering a different thing, trying to find one of a different size, because they really liked this fridge that they had. So our talented graphic designer, Casey Keel, made up a little cartoon to help sell this story. The idea that when we have existing tools and systems and software, sometimes it's a lot easier and more efficient to work with the things we have, even if they're not 100% the thing that would meet all of those needs. Because the cost of getting to that 100%, as opposed to settling for, say, 95%, can be enormous, right? Implementing a new thing, working in other systems, all the other stuff that goes with it. If you've ever heard the phrase shaving a yak, that's kind of the story that you're talking about in some of these systems. So when we have people go off to a conference, see some new cool thing, and then come back and say, hey, I want to buy this, a lot of times that conversation is, you know, we have something on campus that does something very similar to this. Let's explore that and see if we can work in that first. So our last series of stories here for the next 10 minutes are all along a certain theme. So this first part here, I'm going to borrow from one of my favorite acts. This is Apollo Robbins. He has a great TED Talk called The Art of Misdirection. He was also one of the hosts of National Geographic's Brain Games. And he is a pickpocket, professional pickpocket. The Gentleman Thief is a great Vegas show, apparently, that's been very successful. And I love watching his stuff. So I borrowed this concept from him, and he talks about where your attention and focus are. When we go to, say, shut down or end of life or retire a service, what are we doing? We're taking something away from people. When you take something away from people, you walk up to them in their space. What do? They put up a barrier. They get defensive. My focus is on you, and you're in my space. You're going to take something away from me. And over my dead body, right? Like that's the phrase that they don't always say out loud, but sometimes they do. But our job is to go in and try to figure out how do we take this thing away. And you can rip it right out of their hands. And of course, now you have a screaming, crying baby on the other side. I have 4 kids at home, so that's where my head went. Apollo's trick here is not to go in directly. He puts his hand out, a coin, a card, something in his hand, and draws your attention to that. And then he keeps that there and he pivots around that point until he's standing next to you. And you're both standing side by side looking at this thing together. Now he's in your space, but you never even realized he stepped into it. At that point, he can reach around there and pull out your wallet, your keys, your phone, whatever it is you have, but because your attention is still out in front. Where's this fit into IT service management? When you go to take things away from people, usually their focus is not really actually on the tool. The reason they want this tool, this service, why their attention is there is because of the problem it solves for them. Your job, when you're taking things away, is to go listen for that problem, to identify that, put their focus on that problem, and then you pivot around that and you help them solve the problem in a way that doesn't require the old tool. Once you've done that, picking their pocket and taking away that service goes much, much easier. I'm saying this from the perspective of the guy that walks in to a place and everybody says, oh, great, what is IT taking away now? Because I've screwed this up so many times by ripping it right out of their hands and leaving a crying, screaming faculty member. And instead, I've learned that I can focus on that problem that they're solving. Oh, the reason you need this system is because it does this in a secure way. Okay, awesome. Let's talk about security and how do we solve your security need in some other way, for instance. So we're going to jump into another tremendous failure of mine. When we moved to Google, we left behind Microsoft Exchange. We'd been in an Exchange for 6 years and we were very excited about Google. It was all about going Google. It's so exciting, all this kind of stuff. Look at all the great features, all the space, everything like that. And it really did also involve trashing Exchange. I mean, we talk about Exchange openly, like it's the evil Exchange empire and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of the project, we got the project team together and we had a funeral. It was more of a wake, actually. We held it at a bar, had drinks. I made a tombstone. We had a server. I read a eulogy, which was very funny and all in good taste and everything, but it was incredibly insensitive. It was insensitive because one of the team members, Paul, was an Exchange administrator. He had built up his career being great at managing Exchange. And while we were ready to move on to Google, he's looking at this thinking, what's this going to do to my job? We hired him to run Exchange, and here we were 6 or 7 years later, leaving it behind. And he's got to think, where's my career go next? Because you don't need an Exchange administrator to run Google. What's in store for me? And I'm sitting here trashing Exchange. We're laughing about it, right? And he's got to be anxious and nervous. Now, Paul's a good friend of mine, and we've talked through this, and we're great. But I learned a lesson here that language really does matter. This is where I came up with this concept of retiring a service instead of end of life, retiring a service. And that's because language really does matter. When you talk about retirement, you have a party. People are thinking about, oh, great, what are you going to do in retirement? What's that next step for you? It's an opportunity. And we thank them for their service and we toast their accomplishments. At a funeral, people are crying, right? People are sad. You have a eulogy, right? And with retirement, you plan for it. You schedule it. You say, I know this is coming here. So what do we need to do to prepare for the next stage? Let's just say that death and scheduling don't go hand in hand very well. So I think the language matters part here helped us shift the way that we thought about it and helped us change the approach to the projects we had. When we went to go retire services, we started to plan for them as in somebody's going to leave my team and they're going to retire. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to transition. I need to plan. How am I going to get from here to there? Everybody's anxious, but we're going to get through it together. And that leads us to our final story of the session. So learning from this lesson, a couple of years later, we went and we retired the LSoft listserv product. We have been on listserv for 31 years. We were one of the first 10 customers of LSoft listserv. And in leaving this behind, you had a lot of history and you had a lot of people's hands all over this thing. And the lessons that we really focused on when we were moving, because we ended up migrating stuff over and moving over to Google Groups and doing all this work, was how do we do this in a way that recognizes and celebrates listserv? So my project lead on that, Paul, different Paul, threw a party, got a cake, and invited all of our IT organization, invited back past staff, people who had retired, who had worked on supporting and administering listserv over the years. He even thanked, in fact, it was the same Paul that worked on Exchange, was one of the administrators on listserv. And we gave prizes and told stories, and people got up and told old stories and gave toasts, and it was a lot of fun. People were smiling and laughing. And contrast this to that feeling of what you saw in a funeral with an Exchange tombstone. As funny as that might have been, this was such a more positive way to go out, to recognize all those people, celebrate their accomplishments as we look forward to the future, but not forgetting all of that. Because at the end of this, at the end of any retirement project, that service may go away, but those people who worked on it, those people who work with you every single day, they'll still be there. And those relationships are crucial. So that is the end of our story time. I'm Chaz Grundy. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. The slides are also available there. Thank you all so much.
Wow, wasn't that a great set of stories from Chaz? Thank you so much. There are a few gems there that I definitely will be taking back to our organization as we continue to mature in IT service management. So at this point now, I want to get us set up and prepped for our speaker, who will start at 2:05, and that will be Robert Dougherty, and he will be talking with us about knowledge management. He is from the University of Southern California. So Robert, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you so you can get set up, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much, Deborah. I think we're probably good to go, but let me get set up real quick. Can everyone see this okay? Can someone confirm?
Yes, looks great.
Awesome. All right, well, I guess we'll just get started early, so we have time for the next speaker. Hello, EDUCAUSE community. I'm here to speak with you all today about knowledge management and the journey that USC is beginning to integrate that knowledge management into our larger IT service management program. So just as an introduction for myself, my name is Robert Doherty. I work as a knowledge management analyst at USC's Information Technology Services. My primary role for the past few years has been the manager of our knowledge-centered services program in the customer support department. And it's been going strong there for more than 4 years now. But in recent months, I've been taking on a new role as our interim knowledge process manager to build out a knowledge management practice for the unit. So we've had, pockets of knowledge success, like knowledge-centered services, but nothing that's across the entire org or well integrated into a program. So we recently concluded a multifunctional task team effort to identify an enterprise knowledge strategy and approach for the unit. So that actually sprung from a different initiative that we had, which was a metrics program. So we're trying to shore up the way we do metrics and reporting and making sure that we meet our service level agreements. And so lots of people were having questions about how can we improve in these metrics. And so one of those areas that was identified was knowledge management. And so, we looked around in the industry and we do see, we have this quote here in the middle here from, Gartner and ISO calling knowledge management, one of the most important assets and a key differentiator for an IT organization. And so at the conclusion of this task team, we came up with an approach, pitched it to our senior leadership, and it has since been greenlit. Now we're transitioning that approach to the department's service management program, and then also formalizing the rollout via our project management office to just carry out that actual approach. So we are starting from the ground up here. If we really had to put a score on our knowledge maturity throughout the organization, it would be, if it's 1 to 5, we're probably around a 1 or 2 maybe. And so there's no central knowledge repository other than something like Servicenow, but use across that across the organization is very sporadic. There's isolated best practices within different groups, and there's no real governance over knowledge itself. And so we're really trying to solve for the lowest, the minimum problem that we can solve here, and we're limited by lots of different things about like budget and staffing. And so we're trying to start small here. So we're taking a programmatic approach, integrating into ITSM. We're asking all of our departments to take small steps, and then we'll get engagement as we move forward. So this is an outline of the key activities that the projects that we're going to be instituting are going to move through. And really what we tried to do is define what are the minimum activities to meet the core functionality of knowledge management. So if you do any research into knowledge management, what you're really trying to do is get the right knowledge assets to the right individuals at the right time, at the right access, right? And so the two problems we're trying to really solve here is discoverability, and then also the creation of knowledge. So if we walk through this diagram here, these are the key activities that most of the groups are going to be going through. First, we need to actually figure out what knowledge we have, right? Then what we need to do is categorize that knowledge so we even know what we're dealing with, and that we can then see if it's in its appropriate location and if the appropriate people can get to it. Next up, you just create an actual knowledge map. So you would have an actual understanding of your current environment. And then you move on to the building phase, which is in gold here. So then we're going to be doing some standardization. So we're setting standards for ourselves about knowledge and what we should be creating in the future that we might not be creating now. So that's solving that first problem. And then building a system of tools that allows everyone who could need access to our knowledge to have it. So that's that discoverability problem. And then once you've built all that out, what we're going to be doing is then migrating that knowledge to its appropriate home, and then eventually creating a system of continuous improvement so that we can keep things healthy and eventually improve, going to future installations of things like insight engines to have unit-wide knowledge discovery instead of just in separate pockets. So how do you do this categorization? We came up with a typing system. So we looked out in the industry, and there isn't a whole lot of guidance. We even, had it. We've talked to Gartner. We tried to figure out, what's the best way to figure out, what buckets make the most sense for you, and what are you actually trying to solve, really, right? So if we're really trying to solve that discoverability problem, we had to just come up with our own typing system here. We even showed this to Gartner and the analysts we were working with. I thought it was pretty neat. So I thought I'd share it here with you guys. Really, what we tried to do is figure out what we really wanted here in terms of, we called it knowledge velocity. And so it's along the lines of, if it's something that's industry-wide that lots of people need access to and they need it immediately, that would be something like a type 1. Moving towards type 2s and type 3s, those are more tool embedded knowledge. They're embedded more in teams. If you have a specific role, you might need access to that. And then type 4 is where, unfortunately, most things live, right? Those are the things that are on local endpoints, on people's password protected shared drives, and even just in their head, right? So that's that tacit knowledge that's really difficult to tease out of people and get people to share. And so a lot of what our approach is to move items from these higher types of type 4, type 3, move them closer to 1 and 2, and then eventually, if we get to type 0 in the future, it's probably going to be customer access for a lot of our knowledge. So again, we're solving for accessibility here. So really, we want to figure out where things are located, what their access structure is, and just awareness for folks that they know that it's there. So if we have something like at the end of our discovery period and we build out a new system, we'll have a knowledge map, and you can have a complete description of a group or a team's knowledge landscape, and so that people can immediately go and access that information as quickly as possible. So we did try different naming conventions here. We tried to call things fast or slow or hard to get and things like that. But really, just in practice, what we found is having those kind of conventions is just too confusing for folks because they can interpret it in their own way. So what we really just did at this point was we typed them out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and gave definitions for folks. Okay. So this is the phased approach that we've set out for our different departments. So we're really worried about acceptance and adoption here. So we're asking each leader in each area to at least start. And so we wanted to give them some key activities for them to do to start moving at their own pace. We don't even have necessarily them formalizing their project management office projects until they've completed some steps before that. So we really wanted the startup costs for folks to be relatively low and to get more buy-in, so that we're really trying to hit for adoption and acceptance rather than speed here. If something like knowledge management can definitely help out operations, but it's really like the infrastructure and the scaffolding that helps you improve all other areas of the IT organization. And so we weren't trying to do a big bang approach where we're trying to have 20 projects in parallel and everyone's scrambling to get things done in 1 year. So this is just an example of some of the options we've been giving our leadership and our management. So we're asking each vertical to select a speed, and then just giving everybody an end date in the future, which was going to be in 2022. Now with we did launch this roadmap during the pandemic, and so maybe that 2022 marker for everyone isn't as realistic as it was 10 months ago. But we are at least trying to give everybody a hard deadline at the end, but then giving people the ability to move as quickly as they want. And so we really wanted to lay a road for those who are excited and who are super pumped for this, and give them the resources and the support that they need to get started if they want to move quickly, but also lay out the road for those who may be hesitant and they might not have the resources. With the pandemic, financials and budgets are constrained. And so we just wanted to make sure that there was a path for everybody here to make sure that we get that universal adoption. Okay, so like I mentioned, we started this off as a task team of multifunctional group across the whole IT organization. And so this is, that team came up with the approach. They came up with their recommendations, templates and resources, and then that was pitched to our senior leadership, and then that was approved. So then that's moved over into the IT service management program for oversight. And so me as the interim knowledge process manager, I'm the key contact point for the different sections that are going to comprise the actual program. And so on one hand, we have our enterprise project management office, which is actually going to be run by a program manager. And that person is going to be managing the actual projects as they move through their key activities that we discussed earlier. And then in parallel, what I'm going to be doing is setting up a knowledge user group, or what we're calling a champion network. And so we're going to hopefully have embedded knowledge champions within the different teams so that we can make sure we have team level, boots on the ground support, and people have a direct channel to get the best practices and support that they need. So that's how we transitioned from our task team down to the ITSM program, and then down to an actual IT knowledge management practice. So talking a little bit about this user group, what we're going to be forming here is we're calling it our Knowledge Champion Network. It's just going to provide a collaborative forum for its members. The network will provide that feedback loop to share knowledge management best practices, resources, and guidance to these champions, as well as provide a path to escalate issues or roadblocks back to the ITSM program. So like I mentioned before, how we're having everybody go at their own pace, we're going to be building out this network slowly as more teams and individuals move through the PML projects. We didn't really want people to be sitting around in a knowledge champion network when they have literally started no knowledge work and maybe the project hasn't even launched. So we just want to make sure that we launch this at the appropriate time when we have kind of a critical mass of people who need these resources. And so how is this champion network going to be comprised? So we've identified 2 roles that we'd like to implement. One is the core champion, who will be like the point person and knowledge advocate within their specific vertical. So this person will attend the actual champion network forum. They'll be the one escalating issues to the knowledge practice and the ITSM program in general. And then as well as sharing out the information and resources to our second role, which is our team level champion. And so these, they can have several team level champions, and this role will be an advocate at that team level, share information and best practices there, and then escalate any issues or roadblocks back to their core champions. So we really wanted to make sure that there was a clear line for folks to be able to escalate issues and have a point person to get their resources from. So we hope that by embedding the core champions at these levels, we can achieve engagement and adoption throughout the organization and just provide the proper connection points back to the service management program. So what's next for us? So currently at USC, like I mentioned, we've gotten approval from our leadership, which was the biggest selling point, although I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of the request for this practice was driven by leadership. And so getting their buy-in what was, not necessarily easy. We still had to pitch something that worked, but it was a little bit less of a ground or grassroots effort, and it was more top level. But so what we're doing is we're asking those leaders to select their own pace. We're giving them recommendations for resourcing, who would be the best people to put on these projects to help them move forward, thinking about people who know about the current knowledge landscape that each of their groups have, people who can envision a future state and a better knowledge approach and actually implement those and keep people accountable is really great. So we're currently actually running 2 pilot groups of those core activities that we talked about. And we're, doing those activities and that approach to build up experience, best practices, resources, templates, artifacts, just things that we can give over to those projects as examples of excellence and just how different teams have tackled the problem. So we're still awaiting a formal kickoff of those projects, but we still have a lot of experience with running these pilots so far. And so if you guys have any questions about how those have gone, how the approaches played out so far, I'd be happy to answer those questions. So that's actually it for me. So I want to thank so much for everybody for inviting me to participate today. And if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out to me. My email is just robert.doherty@usc.edu. I know we still have a little bit of time here at the end, so I don't know if there are actually questions in chat, but if maybe one of the moderators could help me out there, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, Robert, thank you so much. I mean, that really was a great practical approach that you shared with us around setting up a knowledge management practice. We do have 1 or 2 questions that are here, a couple of comments. The question that we have is, what are you doing for IT questions that could be answered by Google? For example, how to change your default browser. Would you still create an article in your knowledge base and point the user to the exact article on the vendor page? Would you write custom for your university? Or would you simply not create an article?
Yes, that's a great question. That's actually really down to context, right? So if we're talking specifically about, our knowledge-centered services practice, we do have a way to surface knowledges externally to the customer, but usually we're not trying to create external knowledge based on no demand, right? So if there are things that are being answered by Google, we might not do that, but really we try to do it in an organic way where if our service desk is getting customer inquiries about a specific issue that might be able to be solved by Google, but guess what? They're coming to the service desk for those answers first. Internally, what happens is those articles get created. We have a pretty sophisticated way of tracking knowledge use, at least at the front lines and in the KCS structure. And so what we do then is we bubble up those based on usage. We do monthly reporting on new and evolving issues, and then so you start seeing that interaction with the knowledge at the service desk level and how many times folks are attaching those and those knowledge articles to incident records and things like that to show you their usage. And then you start considering, hey, this is something that's probably been formatted something for internally, but then you might surface that externally, and it could still be something that points directly to another help article somewhere else. Maybe, I know we have had several articles that point to other universities to solve specific tech problems. And so really what we try to do as far as the knowledge-centered services is concerned, is we're really trying to have knowledge that's sufficient to solve the problem. And that might mean pointing directly to some other page somewhere else on Google.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, who handles the knowledge article? Oh, I'm sorry. A third question came in. The second question we have is, do you let any licensed user create a knowledge base article? Does it have to go through an approval process, or is everyone able to publish a knowledge base article?
So we have two knowledge bases within our ServiceNow instance. We have one that's internal to ITIL licensed users, and then we have an external one that's visible to customers as well. And so what we do is we train folks up in the KCS program to be able to publish as often as they'd like in the internal knowledge base. So there's no review there. All we're really doing is we have a mechanism for those articles to expire, and we've really just co-opted that feature for us to be able to review and look for duplicates. So we have a whole structure around giving people the training up front to create knowledge articles, and then a protracted coaching structure to let them to give them feedback on how they're creating articles. So in the internal knowledge base, they're free to publish as much as they'd like.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, who handles the knowledge article feedback? Is it the person who created the KB article, the person who owns the service, a centralized knowledge curator?
Yeah, so we do have we have two knowledge management analysts, and what we do is there's a feedback system for those articles. What happens is if the feedback is concise and understandable, what we'll do is we'll actually directly make those edits without consulting the article's author. Knowledge-centered services really preaches that, once you publish an article that goes into the system, it's not really yours anymore. You're just the author to be a person of a subject matter expert, right? So if the feedback that we're getting on an article is more complicated than we can easily insert or edit or delete things, then we will go and start a collaboration with the feedback provider, the author, and then we'll facilitate that as the knowledge management analysts.
Okay, awesome. So we have time for one more question.
Sure.
And that question is, how do you track how your knowledge bases are used on your service desk?
Yeah, so at the service desk, we use Servicenow Reporting. And so if anybody's in that world, there is a specific table that we're reporting off of that tells us knowledge uses and knowledge attaches to other records. And so we actually do monthly reporting on all of those metrics. So we know how many, down to a specific service desk analyst, we know how many articles they're viewing, how many they're attaching, and then we give them a participation score in the program based on those metrics. We're actually even, I know we're running short on time here, but we're actually trying to get into a new realm of figuring out if those attaches are actually accurate, so folks aren't just doing busy work and attaching things just for the sake of it. But so that's something we're exploring, but yeah, it's very exciting.
Yes, thank you, Robert. You have lots of kudos in the chat session, and the participants really thank you for answering the questions. We thank you very much. Very informative, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we are going to get ready to get prepped for our next session, which will be our last session, and it will be around reducing incidents. So our final presenter for this track will be Steph Carter from the University of San Francisco. And Stephanie will share ways to reduce incidents using an IT service portal. So thank you so much for your patience while we get her set up. And as soon as she's ready to go, she will start our last presentation.
Well, I'm ready if you're ready.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. It'll give everybody a chance to ask questions at the end. So
right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's jump in. Hello, everyone. My name is Steph Carter. I am with the University of San Francisco. Very fitting that Robert would go before and talk about knowledge management. Knowledge management has been a big key for us at USF, and how we have reduced incidents with our portal. We've done a lot more than that, which you'll see throughout the presentation, that reducing incidents was one of the goals, but we've been able to do a lot with our portal, especially with several iterations. Yeah, I'm excited to show you. Move this over there. So as I said, I'm Steph Carter, and I am the Interim Director for Digital Engagement Technology at USF. DET is a new department just the last few months that has been created recently by our CIO to address items just like this, the service portal, mobile apps, live chat, all the things that we're using at USF to digitally engage and serve the USF community. Just a little housekeeping to start off. Just going to do a brief intro of our community and what we are using as far as IT service management goes, and then walk you through kind of our story of our original homepage that we were using for people to request services, and how we have iterated through a couple of different instances of our service portal. Just some key takeaways and give you a little insight on what we are going to do next. And then certainly, as before, post some questions in the chat, and thanks for helping me moderate those at the end, or just jump in at the end and let me know what's up. So USF is a private Jesuit institution. It is in the heart of the city of San Francisco, right by Golden Gate Park. So if you are ever visiting San Francisco, give a little wave to Lone Mountain. We call it the Hilltop there, and that is our main campus. We do have a couple of other branch campuses throughout the Bay Area where we serve 13,000 plus students, faculty, and staff, undergraduate and graduate constituencies. We do use Servicenow as our ITSM and ITBM service portal platform. We implemented back in 2008, which made us a really, really early adopter in higher education. So we have a ton of stories, some scary, some not, that we could talk about. But this one specifically is about how we moved through offering more streamlined services through the portal. Every story has a starting point, and ours starts with our services homepage. If you're familiar with ServiceNow, you know that part of the environment there internally in the back end is a homepage where you can create widgets, where you can link to other items. Dashboards have become a really popular feature as well that kind of make homepages a little obsolete. But that is where we started our services. People would link from our office webpage on the main internal site and go directly to the ServiceNow homepage and click on a link, put in some information, and send it away into the ether for ITS to respond to. It was not the prettiest or most effective, as you will see. Hold your oohs and ahs. I know it's beautiful, but this was it. This was our service catalog, quote unquote. Several issues with this. This is the screenshot of right before we launched the portal, what existed right before the portal. And the beginning was just that get help upper left widget where we had a few links that created tickets for people to see. And over time, it began to expand into other items, other divisions on campus, project management. And as you can see in non-ITS services on that bottom right, development, HR, our one card and security, and even our purchasing group jumped in to use ServiceNow as a ticketing system. But this was not necessarily a great place for their audiences to jump in and request services for them either. Several of these issues, everything was an incident. It didn't matter where you clicked on this page, what you filled out, everything became an incident ticket. And because of that, all of those tickets that came in were reviewed by our help desk manually. So students and staff alike would receive a ticket, would review it for routing, try to decipher what the user was asking for, and then assign it to the correct group. If it was a request and not necessarily an incident, it still remained an incident ticket. And what happened was we would change the type of incident instead of actually changing the ticket record. So the number of incidents that we were receiving was much larger than we could handle. Not only that, but our ITS email alias would receive emails. We would go in and check every email, and a lot of those emails would get copied, pasted into a ticket format and create incidents that way. As you know, in higher ed, there is quite the ebb and flow of times when people need more assistance than others. So at peak times, that inbox would become extremely full. It may take a couple of days before we could get through all of the emails that were there. By that time, most people had sent a second email or called us, and we had created a ticket through a phone call. Unbeknownst to us, their original email was sitting in the inbox waiting for someone to review. So this was quite the holdup. It was creating way too many issues of back and forth, communicating with people what the problem actually was. Well, I emailed you. Well, we haven't gotten to that yet. Well, I'm on the phone now. Okay, well, it was quite the dilemma. And that kind of back and forth wasn't scalable for anyone, but especially folks who wanted to use ServiceNow as a ticketing system who didn't have that kind of front desk assistance, whether that was student help or staff help, didn't have that level 1 support. They were the department that they were, and they didn't have a front desk to help route and review those things. We also had very unclear notifications. This was it. Hey, your incident is open, and here's a link. And if you want to talk to us, go to the comments field. The problem here was that there was no other instruction. If you clicked on the link, it went into your back-end view of your ticket in ServiceNow. And if you have been in the back-end view of ServiceNow, it is not friendly to folks who have not seen a ServiceNow page. They didn't know how to get to the comments section. And they start clicking around and wondering where the status of their ticket was. Was anyone actually working on it? Where do I add comments? Where do I add attachments if I need to do that? And that was really confusing. All of this to say, we needed something new. So the portal was a way from us to escape that home page and all of those issues that I just described and really go into something new. So first, what do? We need to reduce incidents, which means increased self-help. How do we get people to help themselves? And when they can't help themselves, how do we automate and make sure that we're not doing this back and forth dance, trying to figure out what the problem is? All of those issues that I mentioned were really dragging down our resolve time. It was getting ridiculous. You'll see some lovely charts. And we needed to streamline and clarify a lot of our interactions and communications. All of these things are great to talk about, but if you don't have people adopt the technology, adopt using the portal in their everyday, they're still going to call you, they're still going to email you. We wanted to make sure that people adopted it. And so we wanted to introduce the portal in a way that we had not introduced technology before. We wanted it to be formal, but we wanted it to be fun. We wanted people to understand what ITS was asking them to do moving forward and to create a new way, a new expectation of how we would introduce technology. So this was a little video that we put together to introduce Portal 1 to the university community.
Do you know where to get help from ITS? All representatives are currently busy. All representatives are currently busy. We'll be with you as soon as possible. That was then. This is now. The new ITS service portal connects you with what you need when you need it and simplifies your interactions with ITS. No more sending emails into the mythical inbox. No more waiting on the phone. Need something you don't already have? Make a request in 2 clicks. Need answers? The portal search engine gives you the control to solve your technology problem. We're continuously adding content, but if you still can't find what you need, create a ticket and we'll follow up swiftly. Track the status of your requests in My Stuff and know immediately if we need something from you. ITS is your technology resource, and we work for you. Anytime, anywhere, the portal is open.
We wanted to make sure that we didn't just send people to a homepage and expect them to kind of mill about. We wanted to introduce it. Along with that video came very clear instructions, knowledge-based articles, additional instructional videos that were just short and sweet, quick tips from us to show them how to navigate the portal. We had the walkthrough tutorial there at the bottom right that they could click on all the time. The first time they came into the portal, the walkthrough allowed them to click through it automatically. Once they went through it once, they could close it. And this was very simple, short and sweet. Here it is, how can we help you? And this global search allowed them to look through knowledge articles, allowed them to look through the services that we offered. What you don't see on this page is a way to just go ahead and submit a ticket. We wanted to end that. Here's a link to submit a ticket. We wanted to push them to self-help. We wanted them to start searching. We wanted them to click and find information before they actually created an incident for us. And as you can see, our reduced incident volume, right when we launched Portal 1, toward the end of 2018, we had hit almost 35,000 incidents for our community of 13,000 that we're serving. And that was way too much for us to handle. Most of you, I know, are running as lean as we are in higher education, especially with a lot of the things we've been going through, whether that was 2008, 2009, whether that was COVID in 2020. And one of our initial outcomes of Portal 1 was we had less incidents, 2,500 less incidents year over year. At the time this specific graph was taken, we were on track to do even less than that, which you'll see a little bit later. But this was our main goal. How do we drive people to not create incidents? And it wasn't just that they were creating less. We knew they were creating less because they were calling us less. Almost 5,000 less emails, 5,000 less calls. If you're not answering email and you're not answering calls, you can actually be working on someone's problem. Excuse the dog. 20,000 more article views. Robert is setting up this great program at USC for knowledge management. That was a big key for us. People looking at the knowledge articles and not giving us a call, not sending us an email, not creating a ticket. Those went way up almost overnight because when they would search in that search bar, the information would drop down for them and they could see, oh, here's my answer. It was a great way to increase self-help for them. And then the copy-paste emails that I talked about, driving automation. Instead of copying and pasting those, what we did was we set up an automatic job. Every email generated a ticket. And then once that ticket was generated, that's when we could assign automatically. Most of that went still to the help desk, but we used some keywords to look for others. Certainly there were mistakes in the beginning, but rerouting something was much easier than having to go into an email inbox and copy something and paste it and then guess at who it should be for. That really freed up a lot of our folks' time at the help desk to be working on tickets. One of the results of that being able to have the time to work on things was when we launched the portal, we were at a 9-day average. So average of all of our tickets, closing them, that was our resolve time. And then a year out, we had reduced that by 3 days. Still not where we want to be, but that was a big deal. If you can solve someone's issue in 3 less business days, that is really, really helpful. This is one of our improved email notifications. Not only does it look a lot better, not just plain, but every single link here directs people back to the portal. It doesn't send them to backend ServiceNow. It links directly to where they need to go. Their My Stuff ticket page is now a place where they can easily see the status of their ticket. They know exactly where to put in additional information, how to add attachments if they need to. And then when ITS is responding to them, they can clearly see, oh, this is who is responding to me. Here's a KB article. Ah, I see what I did. I missed this step. It was a very clear interaction. I've submitted a ticket. I get an auto notification that says it's been created. When I click on that, it takes me to this page where I can see my interactions with ITS, and it really streamlined this. Being able to communicate this clearly was also a factor in reducing that time. In everything, there is a time to improve. This is one of the takeaways I'll talk about later, but we needed to move into a second iteration. And we needed to move into something that was a little more robust and was much friendlier. So Portal 2 goals, we wanted to open up knowledge to guests. So if you were in the previous session, Robert talked a little bit about a public knowledge base, an internal knowledge base. We have a handful of knowledge bases. One of them is a public knowledge base in a sense that people who have not yet authenticated into, so like logged in with their USF credentials, can still view knowledge articles and get information that they need. One use case for this was we use Duo, for example, for 2-factor authentication. If you're having trouble with Duo, you need to read the article to see how to connect a new device, for example. But then you got in the circle of, well, I can't log in because I'm having trouble with Duo, so I can't read the article that helps me figure out my problem with Duo. This is an issue. So it wasn't just visitors on campus or people looking for information. It was also people who were having trouble authenticating, still needing to be able to look at basic public information. And if they still couldn't do that, they could still call or email the help desk. We wanted to redesign service offerings. So in the beginning, I talked about everything was an incident. We wanted to change that. And we also wanted to offer new pathways for connecting with the help desk. And we wanted to eliminate our ITS web pages completely. What was happening was we'd update information on the portal, or we would update or create a new knowledge article, and there would be duplicate information on our web page that we'd then have to go update. We wanted to eliminate all of that dual data entry, dual data creation. This is what the portal looks like now. So this is what we refer to as Portal 2.0. As you can see, it's a little more robust. We are offering more things here. And because we were eliminating ITS web pages, we added things like My Apps, where people can access all of their applications on campus. So think Workday, Salesforce, Zoom, you name it. If it is a application that ITS supports, you can access those applications here. You can add a favorites page for those. So you're not having to bookmark every single application. You're just bookmarking the portal, and here's how you can get to everything that you need. This is basically just how we, at some point as a guest goes through, they're either looking for information that is a restricted knowledge article. they have to log in to view it, or they want to submit a ticket with ITS, then they would log in with their USF credentials. And if not, they can just continue as a guest and get as much public information from the site as possible. One of our use cases here also is like our strategic enrollment management crew. So we have lots of visitors on campus. How do I check my application status if you're an applicant to the university? How do I find the welcome center? Things like that. They can get from this as well without having to log in because they're visitors to our campus. We redesigned kind of the way that we offer things and put everything in neat little literal boxes, but more than that, we separated out our ticket types. So an incident was an incident. Something is broken, please fix it. A request was a request. Hey, I need some support here, or I have a question. An enhancement was an enhancement. I need this application to do something different that it doesn't do already, or I need to add an integration. We went through and made sure that all of our services clearly aligned to this to really follow the way that we wanted things to flow, not only through our system, but through our internal workflows. This is broken, we have an SLA behind it. This is a request, we can take some more time, but we want to make sure that we get it right. We also added live chat. So in addition to streamlining everything, we wanted to have people be able to interact with a live help desk agent. So we've been able to kind of deflect incidents. I wish that I had more data on how many we've been able to deflect, but I don't have that yet. I do know that 10% of our interactions with folks are through live chat versus emails, phone calls, or walking up to the front desk. 10% are now live chat. A lot of that has to do with being a remote campus throughout 2020. People being able to still talk to people as if they're at the help desk, even though they're working remotely. The reduced incident volume has continued. So at Portal 1.0, you can see we're almost at 35,000 incidents, which dropped almost 3,000. And then the next year, when we added Portal 2.0 and live chat, we're down 7,500 incidents from 2 years ago, which has been great. As you can see, as of when I took this little screenshot of our chart, we've got about 7,000 incidents this year. We're almost halfway through the year. I'll be interested to see where we are June 1 to see how much more of a reduction we get this year. The improved resolve time continues as well. Fewer incidents means I'm able to work on the incidents that are there. I'm able to move through them more quickly. When we were at that 6-day average, and then as of yesterday, we're down to 5-day average. We're trying to find ways to speed this up and get to a lower average. Our P1 and P2 incidents are down at a 1-day average. This is kind of the overall average. So we're still wanting to get that down. We'd like to get down to a 3-day, and we're exploring all the ways that we can move that velocity. Eliminating these web pages. Some of our incidents were due to misinformation, and this was the big culprit, this out-of-date information. So all of this information here that you see, if it was a web page that contained information about services, we have moved that into a KB article. And instead of maintaining all of these pages and the menu items on the left, we maintain it through the portal. This is what our ITS homepage looks like now. Go to the portal. If you have a question, go to the portal. If you need something, go to the portal. We love you, but go to the portal. And that has been a big help for us because we don't have incidents saying, well, the website said this. Okay, well, that's out of date information. Apologies. Here's the correct knowledge article for you to view. And some takeaways for us. It's never done. And we know that in IT and in higher ed, so many things are cyclical. we just continue to improve. So we take Portal 1, what were the really great outcomes of that, and how do we enhance that for Portal 2? Continue doing it, don't stop. Collaborate, get more perspectives. One of our pitfalls with Portal 1, while it had great outcomes, was designing it in a silo. It was just IT. It was IT and our implementation partner, and that was it. And we learned a lot of lessons from that, especially from faculty on what they needed from ITS, which informed some of the design. Some of the UI of Portal 2 was due to actually doing the focus groups that we did not do with Portal 1. So always collaborate. More perspectives is always going to be better. Obviously, you're not going to be able to solve a problem for everyone or meet every single person's need, but the more perspectives you have in the room are always going to make the outcome better. I know that most of you know that already. And expand. Do it gradually, do it often. Take it in the chunks that you can take it in. Identify those first keys. Like one of our first keys was just like, man, we have to resolve these things faster. What are ways we can resolve these things faster? Well, reduce the number of incidents that we have. Help people help themselves. How do we do that? And those were the chunks we bit off in the beginning. Then we, added live chat, another chunk, eliminating web pages, another chunk. Find out a way you can do this gradually, but do it often. If you are a university that runs in sprints, find out ways to run it in sprints. And if you're not, find out ways to roadmap it and figure out the resources that you need to figure it out. As always, in the iteration, there's what's next. So for us, now that my team has moved over into the new digital engagement technology team, we are looking to implement all kinds of things on our roadmap. But first will be virtual agent. And this is something we've been looking into for a while. It will actually do away with our live chat that we have implemented, but it will incorporate virtual agent knowledge management and workflows, not only for ITS, but also for our other folks that are using Servicenow. So enrollment management is another big partner for us for that, and our human resources crew as well. We are wanting to deliver mobile for our field agents, especially those who are away from their laptop, away from their desktop, wherever it is. They can go ahead and log information, close tickets, open tickets, wherever they are on campus, wherever they are remotely, they can respond to those things quickly. Slack is a platform that we are going to launch soon this summer for collaboration. And we are looking into all the ways that ServiceNow and Slack can work together to further improve resolve time. And then the app engine, where we start into scoped apps, portal pages for other divisions on campus, and really bringing in the way that folks are using ServiceNow to deliver services, and how can we really make that experience for them much better than it is already. So these are some of the things that are next for us. We really think that with the portal, with adding these other digital engagement items, we'll be able to drive down incidents even further, drive up self-help even more. These are things we're pretty excited about. So would love to hear your questions. There is my email and LinkedIn information if you'd like to connect that way. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Steph. That was a very informative session. We do have quite a few questions, and we have a few minutes to work through those. So the first question is, did you get pushback from people who just wanted you to deal with it rather than look it up? And yes, I'm thinking of certain groups, quote unquote, on campus.
Absolutely. I think that I know exactly who you're talking about. And we did. I think that that's why we had to find the people who wanted to run with it. Certainly you can talk adoption and talk about, hey, let's do it this way all you want. And some people are still going to email you, and some people are still going to call you. That's going to happen. But we found some champions for us. I think Robert talked about that with knowledge champions as well, who were willing to move forward. We also made sure that everyone at our help desk understood exactly the message we were trying to convey, so that when they were on a call, when they were responding to an email, perhaps, when there was someone standing at the front desk with them, they could spin that screen around, or they could show them, hey, here's where you go to check. I'm going to submit this ticket for you, right? Here's where you go. You're going to get this email. It's going to send you to this page that we're looking at, where you can check the status of this. If you need to say something else that you forgot while you're standing here with us, please add it to this information. It automatically goes into your ticket. If you need anything else from us, here's where you can go to do that. And that was really helpful in kind of a, teach them to fish sort of way. But like I said, you're never going to be able to solve it for everyone. So I think the folks that are going to adopt it are going to do it. And the folks that aren't, like, it's okay. That's why we still have email and phone, right? Where we're going, we don't need email anymore. That's what I want to tell everyone. But yes, that's still going to happen. But I think go with the 80-20 rule. Let's get as many folks on the portal train as possible. And I think a lot of people are willing to do that if we give them a chance. So.
Okay. And that was a good segue. Speaking about emails, how often do you send email notifications to users?
Well, they get from the portal when they submit a ticket, they get a automatic notification that says their ticket has been created. Also, when they email the help desk, because of that auto generation, they get an immediate response that says your ticket has been created, which links them to the portal. Anytime their ticket has been updated, so if a help desk agent has written comments that we want to be emailed to that user, they get a notification that something has been updated. When they click on it, it takes them directly to the portal, to that My Stuff page where their ticket is, so that they can see that information. And then we send them a notification when their ticket has been resolved. If they, for some reason, don't believe that their ticket has been resolved, that last resolve notification allows them to reopen the ticket should they choose to. That has never been a huge number of our incidents, but we do say to them, like, if this hasn't been resolved to your satisfaction, click here to reopen this ticket, and they can do it that way. But those are the notifications. So created comments that have been added, and resolution.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is around live chat. So for your live chat, how many people do you have, and do the same people who answer the phone support the live chat?
Yes, same people that are answering the phone or emails are supporting the live chat as well. That is mainly our help desk agents. So we have about 5 full-time staff that are help desk, like level 1 help desk, and then we have about 25 students that are help desk as well. So you've got about 30 people. Obviously, they are not working all at the same time. What we do is that I wish I had my help desk crew here with me to answer that question. Send me an email. I can connect you with our help desk for more specific information on that. But they are responding to all of those things. The live chat, I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from them that has been helpful. They're able to get to what the actual question is really, really quickly instead of deciphering, you know, the email's been created and now they're deciphering this information in the ticket, what's really going on. The live chat is helping them get to the point really, really quickly. And that has been helpful. And as you can see in our resolve time, they've still been able to drive down the resolve time, even though they're also addressing live chats as well. So whoever had that question, shoot me an email and I'll connect you with our help desk for more.
Okay. The next question we have is around the reduction of numbers that you've had. So the question is, when will you find out how much of those numbers are attributed to people being more self-serving during COVID?
Yeah. Right when we closed campus, so March 2020, our incidents went way up. So I thought, oh, this is gonna throw off all of the numbers because the incidents went way up. People were trying to connect remotely. They were trying to get on VPN. They were trying to get their, equipment to whatever remote location they were going to. Lots of office moves, like just tons of things came in immediately, as I know most of you probably had all of these things happening as we went to remote campus. But gradually that subsided. And I don't know if it had to do with everyone getting comfortable and settled wherever they were remotely, everyone getting used to like remote work. I'm not sure, but certainly at that, I think it was from March, it was about the 15th, like mid-March, and that like next 3 or 4 months was a crazy spike in volume of incidents. I'd have to pull up our PA to show you the exact spike, but it was big, but it is settled much more now. I anticipate as we bring students and staff and faculty back on campus in the fall, as we intend, that those may go up again. So we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. All right, the next question we have is, do you have a problem management process that helps reduce incidents by addressing them at the root?
Absolutely. Incident, problem, and change. That is our cadence. An incident comes in, and if you were here for story time with Chaz, you got to hear some of that. Why would I create this problem? Well, I'm creating this problem ticket because I have these several incidents that keep coming up. This is no longer broken. There is something huge underlying this, right? The foundation, something wrong with the foundation. So we run those cycles. We run incidents that have not been resolved through problems, and we run problems through changes, or they become known errors that we have documentation on. So that if we run into that and we're, pending some Servicenow change, or we're pending some other infrastructure change, we can say when those incidents come up, oh, there was a problem already created. Here's the known error. We can direct the people to the information, give them at least some sort of timeline for resolution, or hey, we're not sure when this is going to be resolved. We will let you know as soon as it is. But yeah, incident, problem, and change is our workflow for that.
Okay. So the next two questions are really around your ServiceNow team. The first question is, do you have a product team for ServiceNow separate from the IT service team? And if so, how many folks and in what roles? And then the next question, does your portal require a lot of customizations, and how do you manage them, especially against the upcoming ServiceNow releases, et cetera? Do you have a team of dedicated ServiceNow developers?
Got it. So we do have, so the Digital Engagement Technology Department was just created in January of this year. And my ServiceNow support team, I was previously the ServiceNow product owner. My team came with me, and we are currently the group that is Digital Engagement Technology as we figure out which resources, what applications are going to come under this digital engagement umbrella, right? So my ServiceNow support team is me, so former product owner. I have a ServiceNow product analyst who is full-time with me as well. My right hand person who I want to clone. I have a contracted ServiceNow developer, with a services partner that we have engaged with for the last 8 years. We have gotten development services from them. That developer is developer, administrator, all things ServiceNow for us. And then I have 2 contracted technical writers. So they are in charge of our knowledge management program. They are the ones that are making sure that our knowledge is all up to date. And that is the, oh, and we have 1 student assistant as well. So that is what was the ServiceNow support team, and now the initial crew for digital engagement technology. That's the team. As far as the portal and development goes, it is the out-of-box portal that has our branding on it, that has our kind of the way we wanted the widgets to be, the way we wanted the pages to look. So customizations are in that, really, the UI of it. But other than that, it is an out-of-the-box portal. We did use an implementation partner for both iterations, simply because we didn't want to overwhelm our single developer. We wanted him to be able to still be working on regular enhancements and administration. And so we contracted out those hours. First portal was 12 weeks. Second portal was 6 weeks of work. But other than that, our in-house developer takes care of most of that.
Well, thank you, Steph, for taking the time to answer the questions in our Q&A. We are actually at time. Steph did leave her email information, and you'll also have that information available to you from the page that we talked about with our events. So I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we close. Recordings will be made available within 5 business days, and they will be posted online. You will be able to access them from the event page. And I believe also there will be information there for the actual PowerPoint presentations. You will also receive a survey, which I highly encourage you to take. Your responses will help us and our partners plan future events like this one. So stay tuned for more ITSM events coming out soon. And we want to thank you and have a great day. Thank you.